When Update New Power dropped in 2020, War Thunder revealed that more modern aircraft carriers were being added as part of the update, not only to bring in a new feature, but as a complement to the VTOL aircraft being added during the same update. The difference between these aircraft carriers and the ones already in game prior were that they were functional vehicles and not static objects with a runway function. They had self-defense capability, could recognize what kind of vehicles were spawning on them, and had fixed pathing. They came in the form of the USS Forrestal, Soviet aircraft carrier Baku, and the HMS Ark Royal, the Audacious class, which was originally laid down as the Irresistible. The carriers were a welcome addition, with most players opting to use carrier takeoffs, including, for some reason, the MiG-21s that could get an air spawn over the Baku. However, if you chose a catapult takeoff aircraft and accidentally picked the Baku, you were not simply going to play that match because there's no way to take off the Baku in a non-VTOL way. However, this lasted only about 2 updates because by update Red Skies in 2021, which introduced SAM sites on top-tier airfields, maps were reworked to feature new airfields with these anti-air vehicles, and thus maps like Spain that featured aircraft carriers and an airfield that required you to turn left after takeoff lost these, and they had airfields aimed at the other team's airfield, and that pretty much became the standard for new maps and reworked maps, except perhaps for Lake Ladoga top tier in Afghanistan before it was turned into an EC map. So, since 2021, we've had no aircraft carriers, and with the map rotation reworks after Apex Predator, top tier is a lacking of maps that could accommodate carriers. Spain and Sinai show promise along with Golan Heights, but if we're to bring back aircraft carriers, more maps with bigger bodies of water should be added, and I do certainly think that naval components should return in Air RB. Especially now that there are vehicles like the Tornado IDS that can dispatch ships with a cormoran, destroying AI destroyers or even cruisers is now an actual tactics. Top of that, they should give out high rewards in part due to their more realistic damage model and good AA capability. Another reason why we should bring back aircraft carriers is because of the aircraft carrying them. For the last 2 updates, we've had carrier aircraft added in for top tier. The Yak-141, Sea Harrier F4S-1, F4S, and the F-14B. These are aircraft that would have been fun being used on aircraft carriers, and they won't be the last aircraft capable of being launched from carriers. There will still come in the future aircraft like the F-18, MiG-29K, J-15, and so on. These aircraft would be really fun to launch on carriers, and hopefully, Gaijin does add newer AI carriers like the Nimitz, the Admiral Kuznetsov, and the Charles de Gaulle. If ever War Thunder Naval generates enough interest to go into the modern age, carrier aircraft being launched from AI carriers would provide such an advantage to fleet defense in that mode. Of course, the caveat is that these AI carriers shouldn't really have their long-range air defense rebalanced to avoid carrier camping as a tactic. At best, and as an example, for the Nimitz to be truly balanced, it should have the RIM 116 rolling block with a range of 10 kilometers and the CWEs and AA guns for very close range. Stuff like the RIM 162 and RIM 7 Sea Sparrows are a bit of an overkill and can make carrier camping a viable strategy. The Roland SAMs have a range of 6 to 6.5 kilometers tops, and I think that the RIM 116 and Mistral on the CDG and the Kashtan M on the Kuznetsov is fine. The Chinese Shandong and Liaoning have the HQ-10 launchers, so they have a short-range IR missile for defense as well. If the Kuznetsov and the Shandong were to be introduced, it would give players a new takeoff method to consider: ski jump takeoffs. Instead of a catapult propelling you to 200 knots in under 2 seconds, the angled ramp of the carrier instead forces you to take a nose-up angle to facilitate flight. This is meant for aircraft like the MiG-29K, Su-33, and the J-15. Sea Harriers and Harrier GR-7s also use ski ramp takeoffs in the Invincible class. Ski ramp takeoffs would be really cool to see in War Thunder, and I'd really like to do it at some point. The only concern I have for carriers is the number of players spawning on them, especially with the flavor of the month model that War Thunder does for its updates. Let's say there are aircraft carriers, and then next major update they add something like the FNA-18E Super Hornet. Everyone and their mother wishes to recreate the consecutive miracle mission from Top Gun Maverick, but Top Tier Air RB has 16v16 matches, with one of each carrier per side, that only allows 6 people to take off, 4 on the Nimitz, and 2 on the Charles de Gaulle. I mean, only for CATOBAR aircraft. If War Thunder doesn't implement some sort of limit system, players could be spawning on these carriers without proper catapult mechanics and they're just crashing into the sea. Or they could be launching from ski ramps, which shouldn't be a problem for lighter aircraft like the F-18, which was proven in real life by Boeing. But ski jumping an F-14 or an A-6 intruder is another thing entirely. War Thunder should put a limit system in the carriers that takes into account who was chosen to spawn on them and those who wish to spawn in carriers. After reaching the limit, for example, if there are already 4 in the Nimitz class carrier, they should have to wait until these aircraft have taken off. I love the idea of carriers because naval aircraft with anti-ship weapons like the Harpoon in naval would be very interesting to see. But, you know, that thing is really far off to consider. We don't even have the battleships, the fast modern end war battleships for World War II. But we do already have some guided missile, AA missiles, destroyers in the Bravi, and also the USS Douglas. But it would be really interesting to see them in game. So for now, let's just talk about carriers. Let's just ask our carriers as an option for enjoyment purposes. Please, gaijin, bring back our aircraft carriers. Thanks for watching, and as always, this is the Dr. MD. Godspeed.